Is US getting invaded? US boats faced Russian aggression near Alaska. Russia has escalated its provocative encounters in the North Pacific this year, harassing boats in US fishing waters and sending bombers toward Alaska's shores. The crew of the Bristol Leader was laying out its long cod-catching line well within US fishing territory in the Bering Sea when a voice crackled over the VHF radio and began issuing commands. The ship was in danger, it said, and needed to move. The warnings, coming in a mixture of Russian and accented English from a plane buzzing overhead, grew more specific and more urgent. There was a submarine nearby, the voice said. Missiles were being fired. Leave the area. Other US fishing vessels that were scattered over 100 miles of open sea were getting similar messages. Captain Steve Elliott stood dumbfounded on the trawler Vesteralen as 3 Russian warships came barreling through, barking orders of their own. On the ship Blue North, commands from a Russian plane led Captain David Anderson to contact the US Coast Guard, wondering how to protect his crew of 27. It was frightening, to say the least, Captain Anderson said. The Coast Guard's response was, "Just do what they say." The Russian military operations in August inside the US economic zone off the coast of Alaska were the latest in a series of escalated encounters across the North Pacific and the Arctic, where the retreat of polar ice continues to draw new commercial and military traffic. This year, the Russian military has driven a new nuclear-powered icebreaker straight to the North Pole, dropped paratroopers into a high Arctic archipelago to perform a mock battle, and repeatedly flown bombers to the edge of US airspace. As seas warmed by climate change open new opportunities for oil exploration and trade routes, the US Coast Guard now finds itself monitoring a range of new activity. Cruise ships promising a voyage through waters few have ever seen, research vessels trying to understand the changing landscape, tankers carrying new gas riches, and shipping vessels testing new passageways that sailors of centuries past could only dream of. Russia's operations in the Arctic have meant a growing military presence at America's northern door. Rear Administration. Matthew T. Bell Jr., the commander of the Coast Guard district that oversees Alaska, said it was not a surprise to see Russian forces operating in the Bering Sea over the summer, but the surprise was how aggressive they got on our side of the maritime boundary line. In the air, US jets in Alaska typically scramble to intercept about a half dozen approaching Russian aircraft a year, outliers on the long-range nuclear bomber patrols that Russia resumed in 2007. But this year that number has risen to 14, on pace to set a record since the Cold War era. In the most recent case, last month, the United States responded to the approach of 2 Russian bombers and 2 Russian fighters that came within 30 nautical miles of Alaskan shores. Russians have refurbished and restored dozens of military posts in the Arctic region, including on Wrangel Island, some 300 miles from the coast of Alaska, and have laid plans for controlling emerging navigation routes that would bring traffic through the Bering Strait between Alaska and Russia. Tim Thomas, a U.S. captain on the fishing vessel Northern Yeager, encountered the Russian activities on August 26 when his ship was operating more than 20 nautical miles inside the U.S. economic zone. After a Russian plane directed Captain Thomas to take his boat out of the area, he said, he responded that he was within the U.S. zone, not on the Russian side, and that the Russians could not order them to leave. At that point, he said, a Russian military ship joined in and issued similar orders. At this point, I'm going, what's going on here? Are we getting invaded? Captain Thomas said in an interview. Captain Thomas said he contacted the Coast Guard, but the officers there, he said, seemed to be unaware of the Russian operations. They told him he was responsible for the safety of his crew. But he was reluctant to leave. They were finding some of the best fishing of the season, and the Russians had ordered him not to return to those productive grounds for 9 days. The Russians, who were running a military exercise known as Ocean Shield that involved some 50 warships and 40 aircraft operating throughout the Bering Sea, were adamant, and their warnings grew more intense. US officials have since said that a Russian submarine launched a cruise missile from the Bering Sea that day. Alaska already draws a relatively large portion of US military spending, with bases serving the Air Force and the Army in or around both Anchorage and Fairbanks. Jets in Alaska scrambled repeatedly this year to intercept Russian aircraft moving toward US airspace. But jets taking off from inland bases can take more than 90 minutes to reach the coast of Alaska, said Major Gen. Scott Clancy, a Canadian officer who is the director of operations at NORAD. General Clancy said the encounters were professional. In the encounter last month, the 4 Russian aircraft loitered in the area for about 90 minutes and never crossed into US airspace. But General Clancy said it was clear the Russians were both testing the capabilities of NORAD and demonstrating their own, increasing the frequency and also the complexity of their approaches.